The whistle screamed across the desert, long and sharp, rattling glass in the windows of the station house. Heat shimmered off the rails, the iron stretching away into a horizon the color of brass. The train hissed, brakes squealing, smoke curling against the white sky. From its shadowed belly stepped a woman in a plain traveling dress, gripping a worn carpet bag like it carried all she had left in the world. Dust caught in her throat as her boots hit the ground. The crowd thinned quick, wagons rolling off, cowhands spitting tobacco into the dirt, merchants hoisting their crates. No one came forward for her. She stood with her back straight, the weight of a dozen stairs pressing against her shoulders. Whispers tugged at the edges of the platform. Mail-order bride. Not much to look at. Reckon he changed his mind. The woman's name was Evelyn, though none here spoke it. To them, she was just another piece of freight unloaded at the siding, left waiting in the dust. Her gloved hands tightened around the bag's handle. The wind shifted, hot and dry, lifting the hem of her dress, tangling hair against her cheek. The sun bore down heavy, unforgiving. Minutes dragged. A horse tied to the hitching rail stamped its hoof. Wagons rolled past, children pointing, mothers pulling them quick away. Evelyn's jaw clenched. She had crossed 2,000 miles of country on the promise of a name, and now that name was nowhere to be seen. She turned, ready to climb back onto the train and ride on to nowhere, when the tug came, small, insistent, clinging to the fabric of her skirt. Evelyn looked down. A little girl stood there, no higher than her waist, hair tangled from wind, eyes the color of the river after rain. She blinked up, lips trembling before she leaned closer, whispering words so soft they seemed stolen from the air itself. "Can you be my mommy?" The question struck harder than a gunshot. Evelyn's breath caught in her chest. Around them, the platform seemed to still, the world narrowing to the child's desperate eyes. Her hand, sticky with dust and sugar, clutched Evelyn's glove like she feared it might vanish if she let go. From the shadows near the freight office, a man stepped forward, broad-shouldered, his hat pulled low, his face worn from sun and years of hard labor. He carried grief in the slump of his shoulders, bitterness in the hard set of his jaw. He stopped short at the sight before him, his daughter clinging to a stranger. "Anna," he said, voice low warning. The girl only pressed closer. "Please, Papa." She came. Evelyn lifted her eyes to him. Dust swirled between them, carried on the dry wind. His stare measured her, weighed her like a man forced to count debts he could not pay. "You're the one they sent?" His tone carried no welcome. Evelyn straightened, her back a steel rod against the burn of shame. "I was asked to come. Not by me." His words struck like iron. He looked at the carpet bag, the faded dress, the weariness written in her face. "I didn't order a bride." The platform creaked under shifting boots. Onlookers lingered, drinking in the spectacle. Evelyn could feel their hunger for gossip, their delight in her humiliation. The air thickened with judgment, the kind that pressed down harder than the sun. The man adjusted his hat. "Take your train back. This place ain't for you." The girl's grip tightened. "Papa, no." Her voice cracked, breaking like a sparrow's wing in the dirt. Mama said someone would come." Silence followed. The man flinched at the name, at the ghost carried in the child's plea. His jaw worked, but no sound came. The grief was raw, bleeding just beneath the surface. Evelyn's throat burned. Her lips parted, words nearly rising, but she swallowed them back. She had come seeking a place to belong, a name to anchor her drifting. Now all she found was rejection. Still, she could not step away. The child's hand held her fast, as if the world itself had closed its fingers around them both. Behind a freight office, a ranch wagon waited, its wheels rimmed with dried mud, its boards scarred from years of weather. The man finally spoke, the words rough, grudging. "Get in. Least I can do is see you to the house before you turn back." Evelyn's pulse hammered. She looked down at the girl, who beamed through the dirt on her cheeks. Against every instinct that told her to run, Evelyn followed, her carpet bag swinging at her side. The wagon creaked as she climbed onto the splintered bench. The man snapped the reins, and the horse lurched forward, pulling them into the desert road. Dust rose behind, swallowing the town. The land stretched endless before them, sagebrush rolling to the horizon, red rock glowing under the hammer of the sun. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the jangle of tack and the creak of the wagon's wheels. Evelyn kept her eyes ahead, the child pressed against her side. She had thought herself unwanted, discarded. Yet here, beneath the endless sky, a whisper still echoed in her ears, carrying more weight than any promise scrawled on paper. "Can you be my mommy?" The road wound toward the ranch, the desert swallowing them whole, as though the land itself meant to test if she could endure what waited there. And so the bride rode into dust, unclaimed, unwanted, yet bound already by a whisper that refused to let her go. The windmill groaned with every turn, its blades catching the faint breath of evening wind. Below it, the water trough stood near dry, the last drops clinking into the bottom like coins falling into a tin cup. Samuel cursed under his breath, heaving a bucket from the well rope. His hands were raw, rope burned, the skin cracked from weeks of labor without end. Evelyn carried a bundle of firewood across the yard, skirts dragging through dust. The child clung to her side, chattering about a calf that had slipped the fence that morning, her words tumbling like river stones. Evelyn nodded, smiling faintly, though her eyes kept straying to Samuel's hunched shoulders, to the exhaustion carved into every line of his face. The creak of saddle leather cut the air. Hooves pounded against the hard-packed dirt of the road. Evelyn froze, wood tumbling from her arms. Samuel lifted his head, the set of his jaw tightening. 3 riders approached, dust rising behind them. Their coats hung long, revolvers flashing at their hips. They rode without hurry, but with a confidence that told the whole valley the land already belonged to them. The leader reined in at the gate. Clayton Reeves, broad, polished boots, silver spurs gleaming, his hat shadowing eyes as cold as a dry well. He leaned forward on the saddle horn, surveying the ranch like a man inspecting spoils. "Evening, Avery," Reeves called, voice smooth as oil. "Mighty fine spread you've got here. Shame it's run down so poor." Samuel set the bucket down hard. "Don't recall inviting you." Reeves smirked. His men laughed, thin, humorless sounds. "Invitation ain't needed. Not when a man owes the land more than he can pay." The child pressed closer to Evelyn's leg, her tiny fingers knotting in the fabric of her skirt. Evelyn's breath sharpened, eyes narrowing on the riders. She studied the weight of their hands near the gun belts, the way their eyes shifted, restless. Samuel stepped forward. "This land was my father's. It'll be my daughter's after me. Not for sale." Reeves tilted his head, voice dropping, words slicing through the dry air. "A man can hold on to pride, Avery, but pride won't stop a fire in the night. Pride won't keep your fences standing when cattle scatter into the desert." The threat hung like a noose. Reeves let it linger, then snapped his reins. His horse turned, dust swirling up around them. "You've got 1 week," he said over his shoulder. "Then we'll see what burns." The riders wheeled and thundered back down the road, leaving silence choking the yard. Samuel's fists clenched at his sides. The child whimpered, face pressed into Evelyn's skirts. Evelyn bent, smoothing the girl's hair, her eyes locked on the shrinking figures of Reeves' men. Later, in the dim glow of lamplight inside the house, the silence stretched heavy between them. Samuel sat at the table, head bowed, staring at a ledger book thick with debt. Evelyn stacked plates into the basin, her movements sharp, controlled. Finally, he spoke. "You didn't have to stay." Evelyn paused, water dripping from her hands. "The girl asked me to." He looked up, weary eyes narrowing. "You don't know what you tied to. Reeves owns this county. Every man who stood against him's either buried or run out." Evelyn dried her hands slowly, the rag twisting in her grip. "And you?" Samuel's gaze hardened. "I've buried too much already." His voice broke soft at the edges, but he turned away, unwilling to let it show. Outside, a coyote cried, thin and hungry. The wind rattled the loose boards of the barn. Evelyn felt the walls of the house press in, the smell of dust, sweat, kerosene, the child breathing soft in her sleep. She laid her palms flat on the table, steadying herself. "I'll stay," she said, "until the girl doesn't need me." Samuel said nothing, but his silence carried both surrender and reluctant acceptance. Days stretched long beneath the hammer of the sun. Evelyn rose with the dawn, hauling water, mending fence, learning the rhythm of ranch life. The child followed her shadow, skipping at her side, laughing at the simplest of things. That laughter echoed against the weary land, a sound that almost stitched hope into the broken places. But at night, tension lay heavy. Riders passed the ridge, their silhouettes cutting black against the moonlit hills. Once, Evelyn heard the distant crack of gunfire, saw the red glow of a barn fire on the horizon. Neighbors being taught their place. At the saloon in town, voices carried, Reeves' men laughing about the Avery place, about how soon it'd belong to their boss. Evelyn heard it while buying flour, the sneers aimed at her back. "She won't last. Not that one. She's too soft. Bride'll be gone for the week's out." Her jaw tightened. She kept her eyes down, hands steady, but inside something stirred, something she had buried long ago beneath vows never to return to that life. That night, unable to sleep, she stepped outside. The desert lay silent, stars burning like silver fire. She walked to the barn, hands brushing the wood. In the corner, beneath a blanket of burlap, rested a shape she had not touched in years. Her fingers trembled as she pulled the cloth away. The Colt lay there, black steel catching moonlight, worn grips polished by old battles. She lifted it slow, the weight familiar, terrible alive. A whisper of the past filled her ears, the echo of gunfire, the smell of cordite, the cry of a man falling. She closed her eyes, drawing one long breath, then opened them again, steady, resolved. From the house, the child stirred in her sleep, murmuring soft, safe in dreams. Evelyn holstered the gun at her side. The desert wind swept over the ranch, carrying with it the scent of dust and danger. Shadows pressed close, but for the first time since stepping off the train, Evelyn did not flinch. The glass shattered before the lamp even hit the floor. Flames licked up the kitchen wall, smoke clawing for the rafters. Outside, hooves thundered, men whooping, rifles cracking through the night. Evelyn shoved the child beneath the table. "Stay down. Don't move." Her voice cut sharper than the roar of fire. Samuel burst through the doorway, shotgun in his hands, his face black with soot. "They're here." The front window exploded, shards scattering across the floorboards. A bullet smacked into the wall inches from Samuel's head. He flinched, then snarled, returning fire through the shattered frame. "Barn's burning," he barked, choking on smoke. "If we don't." Another volley ripped into the siding, with splintering. Reeves' men circled the yard, shouting, their shadows jerking in firelight. Evelyn pulled the child closer, heart hammering, then rose. Her hand went to the old Colt at her hip. The weight felt like judgment, like confession. Samuel caught the movement, eyes widening. "Where in hell did you get that?" Later, her voice was steady, colder than the night wind. She cocked the hammer, the sound cutting through the chaos like a knife. The door banged open, one of Reeves' men storming in, revolver raised. Evelyn didn't think. The Colt roared once. The man slammed back against the frame, his weapon clattering useless to the floor. Samuel froze. Evelyn didn't. She crossed the room in 3 strides, yanking his shotgun from his hands. "Reload." She shoved it back at him. "Now." His mouth worked, stunned. You draw like." "Keep your daughter alive," she snapped. "Ask me after." More boots hit the porch. Another shadow filled the doorway. Evelyn's hand blurred, steel flashing, muzzle fire searing the dark. The intruder collapsed before his shot left the barrel. Smoke thickened, the air a choke of burning wood and gunpowder. Evelyn's eyes stung, but her aim stayed true, each movement precise, rehearsed by years she had sworn never to remember. Outside, Reeves' voice rose above the chaos. "Bring me Avery's land or burn with it." Evelyn felt something break loose inside her. Not fear, not anger, but the old self clawing up through the years of grief and silence. "Stay here," she shouted to Samuel, then shouldered through the doorway, stepping into the open yard. Fire raged from the barn, casting everything in a red glow. Shadows of riders twisted across the smoke, their laughter sharp as knives. She walked into the yard like a ghost risen from the grave. Her skirt snapped in the wind, her Colt steady at her side. A rider spotted her, jeered, spurred forward, revolver high. She drew and fired in one breath. The man toppled from his saddle, horse bolting wild into the dark. Another lunge from a flank. Another shot, clean and merciless. He fell with the same finality. The others pulled back, the ring of Reeves' men tightening but uncertain. "God Almighty," Samuel whispered from the doorway. The child clutched to his chest. He had never seen death dealt so fast, so exact. The legend he'd only ever heard in saloon whispers now stood in the dust of his yard. Reeves' laughter cut sharp from the edge of the firelight. So the tales were true. Red Eve, the name struck like thunder. Evelyn froze, her chest tightening, old ghosts pressing close. Around the county, men had once spoken it in hushed tones of the woman who could outdraw lightning, who rode with desperados until the day she vanished, swallowed by grief when her husband was gunned down. Her jaw hardened. She raised her Colt again, voice carrying through the smoke. "This ranch ain't yours, Reeves. Not tonight. Not ever." For a long moment, silence ruled. Then Reeves' smirk cut through the firelight. "You can't outrun the past, darling. And you sure as hell can't fight every man I own." Evelyn stood unshaken. The fire cracked. Gunsmoke burned her throat. The desert wind wailed across the plain. But she did not step back. The men wavered, eyes flicking between Reeves and the woman who'd already put 3 of theirs in the dirt without breaking a sweat. Superstition clung to them. Fear of facing a ghost made flesh. Reeves spat, furious, then yanked his reins. "This ain't over." His voice carried into the night as he wheeled his horse and vanished in a smoke, the rest of his riders scattering after him. The yard went quiet, save for the hiss of burning timbers and the heavy pound of Evelyn's heartbeat. She lowered the Colt, chest heaving. The barrel still smoked. Behind her, Samuel stepped out slowly, face pale, eyes locked on her as though he were staring at something both holy and cursed. "You," he rasped. "Who in God's name are you?" Evelyn met his stare. The fire threw shadows across her face, carving her features into something almost mythic. "I was Red Eve," she said simply. The words cost her, dragging old pain to the surface. "Once." Samuel held his daughter tighter, his breath uneven. The little girl peeked out from his arms, eyes wide not with fear but wonder. She wriggled free, ran across the yard, and threw her arms around Evelyn's legs. "I knew you'd keep us safe," she whispered. Evelyn looked down, Colt still in hand, fire reflecting in the girl's eyes. Her throat tightened, every vow she had made to bury this part of herself unraveling beneath that trust. The wind shifted, carrying sparks into the star-filled dark. Reeves was still out there. More would come. The fight was far from done. But for now, Evelyn holstered the gun with a motion too natural, too practiced, to belong to anyone but the legend they whispered about in saloons and campfires. For now, the secret was no longer buried, and the frontier would remember her name. The sun bled against the horizon, spilling red across the desert. Heat waves shimmered, the air trembling as if the land itself held its breath. In the center of the street, boots ground into dust, slow, deliberate steps. Evelyn's shadow stretched long behind her, the Colt riding heavy at her hip. From a far end of town, hooves thundered. Reeves rode at the head of a pack, a dozen gunmen at his back, rifles glinting, faces twisted with hunger for blood. The townsfolk pressed against boardwalk rails, whispering, praying, some already turning away. Samuel stood with his daughter on the steps of the mercantile, jaw set, but fear cutting through his eyes. "You don't have to." Evelyn didn't look back, her gaze fixed on Reeves, every step carrying her closer to the reckoning she had buried for too many years. Reeves pulled his horse to a stop, dust curling around his boots as he swung down. He strode forward, spurs biting into the silence. Thought you'd vanished. Red Eve, he drawled, voice carrying through the stillness. Didn't figure I'd have the pleasure of putting down a ghost. Evelyn's hand hovered near her Colt, fingers loose, steady. This ghost still breathing. The line of hired guns fanned out behind him, rifles cocking, the metallic clicks sharp as hailstones on tin. Evelyn's eyes swept them once, then locked back on Reeves. The town held its breath. Reeves sneered. What's it gonna be, darling? Step aside, and maybe I'll let the girl keep her daddy. Stand in my way, and you'll watch everything you touch burn. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her voice cutting low. You've already taken enough from this land. You'll take nothing more. For a moment, silence pressed like a weight. Dust swirled around boots, the sun beating down, unmerciful. Then Reeves' hand twitched for his gun. The Colt cleared her holster before his fingers brushed the grip. The shot cracked like thunder, Reeves' hat spinning into the dirt as the bullet carved through the brim. His men shouted, rifles rising. Evelyn moved, faster than eyes could follow, faster than the dust settling around her boots. Her Colt roared again, and another man dropped. Then another. The street erupted. Lead tore splinters from posts, glass shattered from windows. Townsfolk dove for cover. Evelyn strode forward through the storm, firing, reloading with hands that never shook. Each shot was final, each motion carved from the old life she had sworn never to wake. Samuel fired from behind cover, shotgun bucking, forcing men to scatter. But it was Evelyn who cut the heart from the pack. Her shadow swept the street, relentless, her figure painted in fire and smoke. Reeves stumbled back, shock flashing across his face. You. Another gunman lunged from the side, close enough to end it. Evelyn spun, Colt barking, the man collapsing at her feet. The dust boiled, the crowd crying out in awe and terror. One by one, Reeves' men broke, spurring their horses, fleeing into the horizon rather than face the ghost who stood unbroken. The legend had come alive, and no coin was worth dying in its shadow. At last, only Reeves remained, his breath ragged, eyes wild. He raised his revolver, hands trembling with rage. You can't run from me, Eve. You never could. Her voice cut clean as steel. I ain't running. The street fell silent, as if the land itself bent close to listen. Reeves' hand twitched, desperate, unsteady. Evelyn's Colt roared once more. The dust settled. Reeves crumpled, his revolver slipping from his grasp, his body folding into the dirt he'd sought to own. Silence followed, the kind that hung heavier than thunder, broken only by the distant cry of a hawk circling high above. Evelyn lowered her Colt, the weight of it suddenly heavy as chains. Smoke curled from the barrel, drifting on a dry wind. She stood alone in the center of the street, the dust of victory and loss swirling at her boots. Slowly, the townsfolk emerged from hiding, their eyes wide, voices hushed. It's her, it's really her. Samuel stepped forward, his daughter clutching his hand, her small face lit with something more than relief, belief. She let go, running to Evelyn, throwing her arms tight around her waist. You're really my mommy now, she whispered, voice breaking with hope. Evelyn's throat closed, tears burning against the smoke in her eyes. Her hand trembled as she set it gently on the girl's hair, pulling her close. Samuel stood near, his gaze fixed on Evelyn. Not with fear anymore, not with suspicion, but with the weight of a man seeing the truth, and finally, the salvation he had not dared hope for. The street lay quiet, the dust slowly drifting back to earth. Reeves' body was already just another tale to be told, another name buried by the legend that had risen in his place. And as the sun sank behind the canyons, the storyteller's voice carried over the years, whispering across campfires and saloon tables. And so it was that the bride no man wanted became the savior no one expected. She walked into dust a stranger and walked out a legend. Red Eve, they called her, the ghost who returned, the woman who carved justice into the desert with 6 bullets and was stronger than stone. Some say the wind still carries her name, long after the fires burned out. For the frontier makes many graves, but it remembers its legends.